Something changes after 40. You are not imagining it. The habits that once kept your body lean and responsive begin to lose their power. The effort is still there. The discipline hasn't disappeared. But the fat around your waist settles in like it belongs there, and nothing you try seems to move it. Most people draw the wrong conclusion. They believe they've lost willpower, that they're eating more than they think, that aging simply slows everything down and there's nothing meaningful left to do about it. But that explanation is incomplete. And for millions of people over 40, it is quietly destroying any real chance at solving the problem. Because stubborn belly fat after 40 is not primarily a calorie problem. It is a hormonal environment problem. And once you understand the difference, everything changes. Think of your body as an engine that was once extraordinarily efficient. In your younger years, it could switch with ease between burning carbohydrates and burning stored fat. Scientists call this ability metabolic flexibility, and it is one of the most powerful silent advantages of youth. But after 40, that flexibility begins to weaken. Hormonal signals that regulate energy start drifting out of balance. Insulin may stay elevated for longer periods throughout the day. Cortisol, the stress hormone, becomes more active than it was designed to be. And hormones that support muscle preservation and metabolic strength begin a slow, quiet decline. Researchers studying aging and metabolism describe this not as a simple slowing of the metabolism, but as a gradual erosion of metabolic efficiency. The body is still capable of burning fat. The problem is that the biological signals directing that process become less clear and far less responsive. And when those signals become distorted, the body does what it was built to do under uncertainty. It favors storage over burning. That is when fat begins to accumulate in exactly the place most people find most frustrating, the abdomen. Not because your body is broken, but because it is responding precisely to the signals it is receiving. Here is where the situation becomes truly frustrating. Most people respond to belly fat after 40 using the exact strategy that worked in their 20s. Eat less. Cut calories more aggressively. Add more cardio. On the surface, that logic sounds reasonable. Burn more, consume less, and the weight should come down. But the body after 40 does not respond the way it once did. When calories are cut too aggressively and cardiovascular exercise becomes the primary tool, the body interprets the situation as a potential threat. Rather than accelerating fat loss, it shifts into a deeply protective survival mode. Muscle mass begins to decline. And muscle is one of the most metabolically active tissues in the human body. The less muscle you maintain, the slower your resting metabolism becomes, and the harder fat loss becomes across every waking hour. At the same time, the constant physical stress of high-volume cardio combined with aggressive caloric restriction elevates stress hormones. This hormonal combination creates exactly the kind of metabolic environment that encourages the body to hold tightly to abdominal fat. The person working harder than ever ends up trapped in a loop. They eat less. They move more. The scale shifts slightly. But the fat around the waist remains stubborn, unmoved, and deeply frustrating. The body is not being difficult. It is being protective. When the metabolism senses prolonged restriction, it prioritizes energy conservation by any means available. And one of those means is holding on to stored fat, particularly in the abdominal region, where energy reserves remain easily accessible during perceived threats. This is why so many disciplined, intelligent, motivated people feel completely confused after 40. They are working harder than they ever have. And the results are smaller than ever before. The real driver behind stubborn belly fat after 40 is a hormone that rarely receives the attention it deserves. That hormone is insulin. Most people associate insulin only with blood sugar management or diabetes. But insulin plays a far more foundational role. It functions as the body's primary metabolic gatekeeper. When insulin is elevated, the body receives one clear instruction: store energy. When insulin falls to a healthy baseline, a different instruction emerges: release and burn stored energy. The problem begins when insulin remains elevated for extended periods throughout the day. Frequent meals, constant snacking, heavily processed carbohydrates, and years of cumulative metabolic stress can gradually push the body into a state known as insulin resistance. In this state, cells stop responding efficiently to insulin signals. To compensate, the body produces even more insulin. And the metabolic environment shifts in a powerful, consequential way. When insulin stays chronically elevated, the body becomes extremely reluctant to access stored fat. The fat is present. The reserves are visible. But the metabolic signal to release them remains persistently blocked, like a fuel tank that is completely full but locked shut. This is the moment when the most important realization arrives for many people over 40. The problem was never a lack of effort or discipline. The body simply could not access its own energy reserves, because the biological conditions required to do so were never being met. That realization is a turning point. Because once insulin signaling begins to improve, the body slowly regains its capacity to shift between storing and burning energy, which is precisely what it was designed to do. For many people over 40, the turning point doesn't come from eating less. It comes from changing the signals the body receives from food. The first shift is increasing protein intake. Protein sends a powerful biological message that muscle tissue is valuable and must be preserved. When muscle is maintained, metabolism remains stronger. Protein also produces significantly greater satiety, naturally reducing the constant urge to snack that keeps insulin elevated throughout the day. The second shift involves reducing large, rapid glucose spikes. Highly refined carbohydrates and frequent sugar surges keep insulin elevated for long windows of time. When those spikes are reduced and stabilized, insulin begins to settle, and the body gradually regains access to stored energy. The third shift is creating meaningful space between eating periods. This gives insulin levels time to fall. During those intervals, the body becomes increasingly willing to transition from storing energy to releasing it. When these three signals begin working in coordination, something important and tangible begins to happen. Hunger stabilizes. Energy becomes more consistent throughout the day. And over time, the body begins releasing the fat that once felt completely impossible to move, especially around the abdomen. This is what researchers refer to as restoring metabolic flexibility. The body relearns how to transition between fuel sources rather than remaining permanently locked in storage mode. There is one more force that can quietly disrupt every nutritional improvement you make, even when your diet is dialed in and your movement is consistent. That force is chronic stress. Inside the body, stress triggers a sustained hormonal response driven by cortisol. Cortisol exists for good reason. It mobilizes energy and helps the body respond to real threats. The problem emerges when the stress response never fully deactivates. Poor sleep, relentless pressure, digital overload, and a lifestyle that never allows genuine recovery keep cortisol chronically elevated, far beyond what the body was designed to sustain. When cortisol remains high, the body shifts its metabolic priorities. Energy conservation becomes more urgent than energy expenditure. Abdominal fat storage becomes a protective biological strategy. This is why some people clean up their diet, increase physical activity, and still struggle to see meaningful results. Their metabolism is operating inside a continuous stress signal, and under those conditions, fat release is not the body's priority. When stress is reduced, sleep deepens, and recovery becomes a genuine daily practice, the hormonal environment begins to shift. Cortisol stabilizes. Insulin signaling improves. And fat burning becomes progressively more accessible. The most important truth to carry forward from everything you've just heard is this: your body is not broken. What changes after 40 is not your capacity to burn fat. What changes is the hormonal environment that determines when your body stores energy and when it releases it. When insulin stays elevated, the body stores. When stress signals remain high, the body protects. When muscle mass declines, metabolism weakens. But when those signals begin shifting in the right direction, through deliberate, consistent, intelligent choices, the body responds with remarkable biological adaptability. Balanced nutrition stabilizes insulin signaling. Adequate protein preserves muscle and metabolic strength. Improved recovery calms the cortisol response. And over time, metabolic flexibility begins to return. That is when discipline stops feeling like punishment and starts operating as strategy. Because once you genuinely understand how your metabolism works after 40, every decision becomes clearer. The foods you choose, the way you move, the non-negotiable importance of sleep, the role of chronic stress in shaping your metabolic destiny. With the right signals repeated consistently, the body does precisely what it was built to do. It restores balance. It protects vitality. And it begins supporting the longer, stronger, more capable life you are still fully capable of building. If this shifted your perspective, share it with someone over 40 who needs to hear it. And if you want to go deeper into the science of metabolism, longevity, and what actually works after 40, subscribe. There is far more ahead.